My name is Ejfa Rosen. I'm an Orthodox rabbi. Once upon a time, I was Chief Rabbi of Ireland. Today, I am the International Director of Interreligious Affairs of AJC, the American Jewish Committee. I'm also President of Religions for Peace. I'm on the Chief Rabbinate of Israel's Commission for Interreligious Dialogue, and quite a number of other organizations. And I'm very delighted to be with you. Okay. I would say that my spiritual moral philosophy is the foundation and goal of my life. Therefore, it does more than simply inform my work. It is my work. I would like to be known, perhaps if you like, on my epitaph, with a kind of description that Novalis used to describe Spinoza as a God-intoxicated man. In other words, I hope that my life is suffused with that sense of the divine in the world, and that sense of the divine is above all manifest in the summit of God's creation and in God's creation as a whole. In other words, in the human person and in the ecosystem of which I'm a part. Our biblical tradition that Jews and Christians share affirms that the human person is created in the divine image. And thus, we discover the divine presence when we encounter one another, as so many of our philosophers have indicated. And thus, it is that awareness that I'm encountering a child of God, one created in the divine image, that I hope animates my attitude and my behavior towards her or him. Similarly, the awareness that the ecosystem of which I'm a part is not just a natural phenomenon, but is the divine creation, is a manifestation of the divine presence in the world, must animate the way I relate to the natural world, to the sentient world, and to the inanimate world. Yes, I believe that this world is here to be able to provide benefit to us, but that also demands of us to be able to ensure that it is beneficial and healthy in and of itself. This I understand to be the charge given to the first couple in the Garden of Eden, to develop the garden, to work it, and to preserve it, to sustain it. So sustainable development for me isn't simply a pragmatic approach, which it is. It is above all the manifestation or the expression of my awareness that I am part of a divine cosmos. So both in terms of my interfaith work, in terms of my encounter with others from different traditions, as well as in terms of my ecological, environmental commitments, these are manifestations of my sense of the divine. In terms of what understanding is manifest in the current climate crisis facing humanity, I think it also is intensified by the current pandemic that is confronting humanity. And that is the degree to which our lifestyle and, if you like, our priorities have been askew. And the manner in which we have exploited the natural world for our benefit in a manner that actually threatens our very existence. The UN Commissioner for the Environment recently stated that there is strong evidence that the way meat is produced, and not just in China, played a role in the COVID-19 pandemic. And recent research just within the last couple of months from the universities of Sheffield and Bath has shown how intensive farming involving, of course, the overuse of antibiotics and the high numbers of animals and low genetic diversity all increase the likelihood of pathogens becoming a major public health risk. In fact, there's a danger now of superbugs because of all these antibiotics that we have pumped into animals that are therefore subsequently retained by their consumers. And then there is the destruction of the rainforests and of natural habitat and of species that have all come about through this almost crazy self-indulgence that is manifest through factory farming. And we know how much of the pandemics that previously have come through irresponsible interaction with the animal world, zoonotic diseases of various kinds, as well as the consequences of environment degradation, the wastage of arable land and of water resources, as well as in terms of the food, the amount of grain that's waste to be able to produce the animal flesh, all of which could sustain so much of our world. In fact, our world doesn't really need to go hungry, as has been often said. There is enough food for our needs, but not for our greed. And I think this is something that is very powerfully expressed by the current environmental crisis and by the pandemic. And it astounds me that more people do not draw these dramatic and self-evident conclusions. Well, the obvious concrete actions that must flow from these observations are that we need to change our lifestyle. And above all, we need to cut down on our consumption of animal flesh, and if possible, to eliminate it altogether and to adopt a plant-based diet. The interesting thing is that so many of our religious traditions understand dietary practice to be an integral part of spiritual living. And yet very often religions have detached themselves, if not from the whole idea in and of itself, very often from the teleology, the purpose of what these dietary laws are all meant to be about. So within my own community, the first and foremost conclusion must be that kosher cannot be separated from ecological sustainability, and therefore that the only real kosher that is appropriate for the modern world is a plant-based diet. And I would hope other religious traditions could draw that too. So it sometimes is unfair to be too demanding of people who are raised on a problematic diet and who find it very difficult to wean themselves off. But we should be encouraging people to move in that direction with compassion and understanding. This also means that we have to take into account the people whose livelihoods have come through this terrible, distorted way of living. We need to find alternative ways for them so that they can also move into a more sustainable way of life and way of production and of maintaining their own economic sustainability. Together with that, obviously, there is the need for us to be able to reduce our consumption of carbon fuels in so many different ways. All these should be seen not simply as material actions that are necessary to guarantee our future, but as spiritual imperatives that reflect our sense of the divine in our world and of our responsibility accordingly. The prayer I've prepared follows out of Jewish ritual liturgical practice as follows. O Lord of the universe, who in Jewish daily morning prayer we describe as renewing creation every day in your goodness, guide us to be true to your commandment given in Eden, to be good stewards of your creation, and ensure that your earth is protected and sustained to give good life and nurture us all. Amen. I think the most important thing that all of us can do on a daily basis is to be conscious and appreciative of God's blessings and not take these for granted, so that thereby we may protect God's gifts and ensure their sustainability and nurturing for all human beings. I'm Rabbi David Rosen from Jerusalem, International Director of Interreligious Affairs of AJC.